citizens' welfare and well-being in the COVID-19 situation. The serious social and economic disruptions caused by the outbreak of the novel coronavirus, COVID-19, indeed left the lives, plans, and projections of many citizens for year 2020 in disarray. There have been many heart-rending tales of sorrows, tears, and death as the pandemic dealt a serious blow to businesses and livelihoods, while ending the precious lives of hundreds of our fellow countrymen and women. Apart from the death and economic devastation COVID-19 continues to leave on its trail, the disruptions of normal life have had consequences on families across the country. CHRICED uses this medium to express its solidarity with the long-suffering people of this country who, for no fault of theirs, have been forced to adjust to the realities of these uncertain times, even in the absence of any meaningful support from the government. To all families that have lost loved ones, including breadwinners, you are not alone. As an organization, we remember all bereaved citizens in our prayers, just as we pray for the repose of the soul of the precious lives claimed by this pandemic. With an understanding of the unprecedented impact of the pandemic, Nigerians expected their government at national and sub-national level to come to their rescue, the way many governments in other parts of the civilized world came to the aid of their own citizens. Unfortunately, the expectations of the people have been dashed again, even as the pandemic continues to rage. To show how insensitive, callous, and less concerned the government has been, this is the time it has chosen to add fuel, PMS price, and impose levies for other critical services. At the last count, there have been unjust and unpopular moves to hike electricity tariffs, raise the fares for train services, and impose a 6% stamp duty for transactions relating to rent payment. These charges and fees are being imposed in the face of multiple taxes and informal levies, which have become a basis for Nigerians, including market women and artisans struggling to make ends, to be swindled on a regular basis. The federal government is not alone in this despicable act of exploiting millions of Nigerians who are hard hit by the pandemic. State governments are taking a cue by also raising the price of critical services such as transportation. An example of this insensitivity to the plight of ordinary citizens is the reported approval of the Lagos state government to hike the price for BRT services. These steps, taken without a consideration for the hardships faced by citizens, are provocative and stand condemned. Similarly, the insensitive position of government has also given the green light to profiteers in the private sector, especially banks, electricity and telecoms companies, to also squeeze Nigerians through arbitrary charges. Where countries which care for citizens are giving stimulus packages to help citizens cope with the harsh economic environment, Nigeria's ruling elite fail to take up the responsibility of supporting the people at such a critical time. The so-called palliatives program of the government was a colossal failure, as the palliatives were again hijacked by the usual suspects, mainly political actors and their cronies. Not contented with the impoverished state they have left the people, the Nigerian ruling elite have been devising all possible methods to callously exploit citizens through more unjustifiable hike in fees and charges payable for services. CHRICED unequivocally condemns these unhealthy attempts to extract the lifeblood of already overburdened Nigerians, especially in these difficult times. This is the time for responsible and responsive governments to show empathy and support their citizens, not to make the lives of the people further unbearable. For us, therefore, these extortionate, unjustifiable, and callous acts in the course of services or the imposition of new charges at a time of raging pandemic is unacceptable and must be resisted by the people using all legal channels. Worse still, these extortionate acts and charges are being imposed at a time when inflation is galloping away and making mincemeat of the pittance which Nigerians are managing to get in the name of disposable income. This is totally unacceptable. Imposing these fees, charges, and levies at such a precarious time is comparable to kneeling on the neck of the people to stop them from breathing. The result is that at the moment, the ordinary people of this country can no longer breathe, as they bear the burden of a governance system driven by extortion and corruption. Corruption is winning the fight. Unfortunately, the COVID-19 is not the only pandemic Nigerians are faced with in recent times. The plague of corruption continues to devastate the lives of citizens. It is one of the major tragedies of our country that the current administration, which came into office on the pretext that it was ready to fight corruption, has sunk neck deep into the same corruption it claimed it was ready to fight. As such, the administration has lost its way, thereby leaving the national treasury at the mercy of the very mindless looters, which the Nigerian people hope will be sent packing from all aspects of governance. As a matter of fact, in the struggle between anti-corruption forces and apologists of corruption, the latter has been winning. What used to be called an anti-corruption fight only now exists in name. The loss of political will and the serious collapse of the moral ground on which the current administration would have fought corruption to a decisive standstill will be seen from the government's act of condoning clearly corrupt characters within its own fold. If this were not so, the sleazy and scandalous revelations coming out of the Niger Delta Development Commission, NDDC, would have made many big thieves cooling their heels in cells of anti-corruption agencies in readiness for judgment day at the courts. There is no mistaking the fact that corruption is winning because the same government which has failed to investigate weighty allegations against some of its very senior officials has been quick to suspend the acting chair of the EFCC, Ibrahim Magu, on grounds of alleged corrupt enrichment. Apart from that, the choice of the chairperson of the presidential panel, which is investigating the acting EFCC chair, shows the government did not do its homework. The choice of a retired justice of the Court of Appeal, who declined to be promoted to the Supreme Court and left the bench unceremoniously in controversial circumstances, inspires very little confidence about the mission of the panel. While we are not holding brief for the suspended acting chair of the EFCC, it raises serious suspicion that the activities of the presidential panel have been shrouded in secrecy, making it appear like there is a precursive objective. It does not inspire confidence that the person being accused has not been provided with copies of the allegations against him to enable him respond. Inasmuch as we are not saying that the suspended acting EFCC chair is infallible, the panel's resort to unorthodox and underhand tactics, wherein the public is totally in the dark about its mission, raise serious questions about the motives. Similarly, given the trend of unceremonious departure of heads of the EFCC in the past, the whole drama around Magu seems like a pattern from the past. When the powers that be no longer want to see a particular head of the agency, Magu's predecessors, including Nuhu Ribadu, Farida Waziri, and Ibrahim Lamode, all face similarly inquisitions in the name of investigation. But to date, nothing has been heard about the alleged infractions. On the other hand, this decision to suspend Magu and other top-ranking officials while retaining the EFCC Director of Operations, Mohammed Umar, as acting chair seems untenable. If Magu is said to have committed infractions, along with other senior officials, are the investigators saying Umar, who was Director of Operations under Magu, is a saint? I think this is very critical. You have a board of which, even so, it is indefensible that the government has not deemed it necessary to look at the weighty allegations against the Attorney General and Minister of Justice, Mr. Abubakar Malami, including many instances of potential conflict of interest in the handling of the legal issues around the recovered Abacha loot, as well as allegations of interference to stop the EFCC from investigating and prosecuting high-profile cases. If the government is really serious about the fight against corruption, it should be interested in what is motivating its own Attorney General to undermine the prosecution of corruption cases as has been alleged. Therefore, the only way the presidential panel can win public confidence is not to engage in selective investigations, but to invite, question, and investigate all those with damning allegations hanging on them. We must not be deceived. It is clear that the political class in Nigeria, irrespective of their political affiliations, have hatched plots and entered into secret alliances against the people. They have repeatedly broken their campaign promises and repudiated the solemn oath they took to protect and defend the Nigerian Constitution. Therefore, the cup of their corruption and iniquities has become full to the brim. Their presence in government has proved to be a constant source of mortal danger to the fight against corruption. This is why corruption is now winning in the country. Insecurity in the land. CHRICED also notes with dismay the daily loss of Nigerian lives as a result of insecurity across the land. In many states, especially in the north, terrorists, bandits, kidnappers, and other hoodlums have made the lives of citizens extremely miserable and unbearable. As stated in previous intervention, and in line with the demands of the public, it is time for the service chiefs to exit the stage, especially considering their failure to secure the country. However, we make no mistake about the fact that the factors driving insecurity go beyond removing and appointing a new set of service chiefs. The mere appointment of new faces may not necessarily mean an end to insecurity, because the problems fueling insecurity are deep-seated and more systemic than most citizens know. For us, the role of political actors as key drivers of insecurity has to be considered. It is fact that many political actors have over the years recruited, trained, and armed private militias, which they deploy to prosecute their electoral battles. These armed groups are later left to their own devices after being used by politicians to achieve their electoral objectives. These groups then metamorphose into killing squads, which go on to take over territories and carry on with their challenge of the authority of the state. The literature on Boko Haram shows the prominent role played by these political actors in the founding and eventual transformation of those groups to agents of destruction and death across the country. The only way out is to hold to account political actors responsible for the formation of such groups. Unfortunately, many of such political actors are working free today after creating outfits which continue to claim the innocent lives of citizens.